Hello and welcome to the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast, a resilience podcast where we talk about all the challenging things that we're working to overcome, like anxiety, health, and relationship issues. My name is Sarah. Welcome to another episode of the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. I'm Sarah and I'm happy to be with you here this week. So this week we are still experiencing winter here in Canada. We had a little bit of mild, and by mild I mean it was around 0 degrees Celsius. And then today we're back into like the minus 20s. And so I'm feeling it for sure because it went down yesterday about 10 degrees in 1 hour. It was crazy. It just kind of everything froze. So it's a little bit, I'm getting done with the winter. We did have our Groundhog Day, and they said early spring. The groundhog said early spring up here in Ontario, Canada. So I'm really, really hoping for that. I have been wanting to watch the movie Groundhog Day ever since Groundhog Day, and my kids always steal the TV at nighttime. So I'm getting annoyed because I still have not watched that movie, which is one of my favorites because it just makes me laugh so much. One thing that I am really excited to share this week is that it is the 1-year anniversary of my book baby, Pendulum by S.E. German. I'm so excited that this book has been out in the world for a year. I just wanted to bring forward that it is having its anniversary. I wanted to thank everybody for their support so far. If you have read the book, please share about it. I am so excited to have written a book that actually has an impact, that, talks about something that's important to me. And in this case, it's mental health, it's PANS awareness, some things that are super important to me given what my family has went through with the disorder PANDAS. And I just always want everybody to, even get it from the library, but share about it, tell somebody about the book so that maybe somebody else out there who's going through something similar, even be it something related to PANS like anxiety, depression, OCD, would maybe be able to see themselves in this book. And it is a middle grade book, but I definitely encourage parents to read it as well and help me to celebrate this 1-year anniversary. I am excited to get into this episode this week. We have been really digging into difficult things this new year and how to take on big things and do things that are really going to move us forward in a big way this new year, tackling the big stuff. And I decided to move from some of those topics into more of a technique this week. And so I'm interviewing somebody that is going to talk a lot about breathing and beating our inner critic as well. So I know we've talked a number of times about meditation, and I provided a number of free guided meditations on the podcast. And in episode 79, we also learned more about meditation from Catherine Hull. But today we're going to dig deeper into its power and hear perspectives from a certified mindfulness meditation teacher, Hannah Jane Thompson. So Hannah Jane says that meditation literally saved her life. She's also the author of the book, Breathe Like a Badass, Beat Anxiety and Self-Doubt, Calm Your Inner Critic, and Build a No-Nonsense Mindfulness and Meditation Toolkit, which is quite a fun name. I really like that. Breathe Like a Badass. I think that kind of gives us that, motivation to really take this seriously. So as I mentioned, Hannah Jane is also an inner critic coach. And on top of that, she's a podcaster and an entrepreneur, and she is based in London, England. So I think you're really going to like this conversation. She definitely breaks down the technique of meditation. We kind of talk about a lot of the practical things around meditation and how to really make it work. And then we also talk about inner critic coaching, sort of those tapes that we play in our mind. We get into imposter syndrome, anxiety, and even more tools talking about self-care, just different things that we can start to consider in our lives in order to bring this more calm, confident person forward that we know that we can be, and how to tackle anxiety, which we know is one of the biggies that we work with here on the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. So I do hope that you enjoy this conversation with Hannah Jane Thompson. Have you read my novel Pendulum by S.E. German yet? If not, what are you waiting for? And if you have, I would love to hear from you. If you don't know about Pendulum, it's a heartwarming story about a young boy who starts to experience neuropsychiatric symptoms after an infection. We follow the boy as he goes through many regular, real middle grade issues like moving, having a crush, playing sports, also while experiencing neuropsychiatric symptoms like anxiety, OCD, tics, panic attacks, and more. If you're interested in checking out Pendulum by S.E. German, it is available through Amazon worldwide, where you can even see a preview of the book, or you can listen to Chapter 1, which is on episode 64 of the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. I hope you enjoy the novel, and thanks for your support. Welcome, Hannah Jane, to the podcast. I'm happy to connect with you today.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. It's really cool. We were talking before about how you're in Canada and I'm in the UK, and it's just, I don't know, it seems kind of weird, but I'm like always just so happy to connect with people all over the world. And the fact that you're literally thousands of miles away and I can chat with you, I know it's not new, but I love it. So yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And likewise, it's definitely great to connect. So why don't we start with you providing a bit of your background and then how you got into teaching others about meditation?
Yeah, wow. So where do I start? I mean, I can tell you that obviously my name's Hannah and I am a meditation teacher. I also like to call myself an inner critic coach because I feel like sometimes the biggest thing that people struggle with is their kind of mean inner critic, kind of telling them that they're never good enough. So inner critic coach, but also I'm a trained meditation teacher and mindfulness teacher in the sense that all of my coaching techniques to help people overcome their inner critic are based on science-based, down-to-earth mindfulness and meditation techniques. I have learned a lot of Buddhist theory and I really respect the kind of Eastern and the historical origins of the practice. But my practice and what I teach is very down-to-earth. It's not unknown for me to swear in a meditation. I meditate sitting in bed, like chilled, like it's all about just making it really accessible and making it work for you. Yeah, so my business is called Breathe Like a Badass, which is kind of part of that whole ethos of like, you know, some people think that I'm a terrible person for talking about meditation in the same sentence as using the word badass, but that's kind of the point. Like, let's make it badass. Let's make it kind of accessible to people. And yeah, I mean, that's what I do now. I'm also a freelance journalist, so I'm always wearing a lot of different hats. But wow, I started teaching probably now about 4 years ago. And since then, I've obviously just been learning as much as I can about actually teaching and kind of understanding how to convey the practice in an accessible and safe, scientifically proven way. Which is kind of what I'm obsessed with, the brain and how it works, which I'm sure we can talk more about that later. But my own story is that I was trained as a journalist. I worked in London, busy, normal 9-to-5 corporate journalism job in London. And I had trained my whole life to be doing what I was doing. And I was so miserable. I can't even tell you how miserable I was. And I just thought, well, everyone else is, doing their thing and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I went to university and I went to train as a journalist and I've worked my whole life to have a job in London and isn't this what I'm supposed to want? And I just was not happy. And so I figured that the problem had to be with me because I'd never been taught any kind of emotional coping mechanisms. I grew up in a family where we were quite close, but we didn't really talk about emotions that much. And I think it's a generational thing as well. I think that it's a lot of hustle, just work harder. If you're struggling, just kind of suck it up and do better, work longer hours. Don't talk about your feelings, like no one cares, and all those kind of messages that I think a lot of us had growing up. Like not all of us, but I think a lot of us, it was always about how hard you worked and like how much money you were making. And, that was kind of the outward signs of success. So I didn't really have any tools to deal with what was basically depression, what was basically my inner critic, the voices in my head just telling me that I wasn't good enough. And that, the reason that I was unhappy was because I wasn't working hard enough, or I wasn't good enough, or something. I wasn't enough of something, or I was too much of something else, or whatever. And I basically didn't have any tools to deal with it because no one had ever taught me them. And it was pretty dark for a second there, like I literally didn't know what to do. I just was getting more and more miserable. And I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't discovered meditation. I discovered it in a magazine article. And the full story of all of this is in my book, but I discovered it in a meditation article. And the title was something, as I remember it, the title was something that said, "Think yourself happy." And I was like, what? Like, I thought thinking was my problem. I thought that I was overthinking, I thought that what I needed to do was stop thinking, or I don't know, think differently or something. And so this headline really stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, wait, you mean that I can be happy just changing the way that I think? Like, what is this? It sounds like witchcraft. And that was my first introduction to meditation. And slowly but surely, I learned how to change the way that I think, change the inner critic in my head from being so mean and telling me that I was, I don't know, not enough, stupid, didn't know what I was doing, tearing me down all day long, basically all day, every day. And I slowly realized that this pretty simple tool of mindfulness meditation could actually have a measurable impact on not only my mood, but also just the way that I thought about myself and the way that I moved through the world and the way that I saw myself in my life. And so that's a very long story to explain that I realized that mindfulness was kind of what saved me. And then a few years ago when I thought, I don't like my job anymore. What am I going to do? And I realized that it was staring me in the face, and I'd been meditating by that point for about 10 years. So I thought, hold on a minute, maybe there's something here that I can help people with.
Oh, no, that sounds amazing. And I think I really like the name Inner Critic Coach because, yeah, I definitely have that inner critic. It's something that I've been working through. And I think there's so many people that can identify with that terminology. And I love the name Breathe Like a Badass. I think that's that's great because, for myself, I enjoy meditation. It's always something that is on my list of like, I should really get into meditation. I even have offered, some free ones on the podcast, doing different guided meditations, taken different courses, things like that. But it is a challenge on making it accessible. And so I think that's a really a great space to kind of be filling in on your part. So why don't we talk a little bit more about mindfulness and meditation, which is included in that? Why do you think it's so powerful? What is it about that?
I can only talk for the kind of meditation that I teach and that I do, because obviously it's like a whole belief system and there are so many different kinds of it. But the mindfulness and meditation that I do is very science-based in the sense that it is basically training your brain, or I should say retraining your brain or rewiring your brain. And very slowly, the practice, if you do it regularly, if you do it consistently with self-compassion and you don't beat yourself up every time you think you're doing it wrong, has been shown to measurably change the networks in your brain. And so literally sitting down to meditate consistently enough very simply, literally just by taking on a couple of techniques. Maybe it's breathing, maybe it's mantras, maybe it's affirmations. I mean, there's a whole bunch of techniques that I use, but it can literally rewire your brain. It's not just about like taking a deep breath and you'll feel good for a few minutes. That is true. You will. Like, deep breathing is great for a whole bunch of reasons. Parasympathetic nervous system. It can cause you to just like literally slow down, take a deep breath. Those things are amazing, but the actual act of meditating and focusing on something, whether it's your breath or your body, has actually now been scientifically proven to actually rewire your brain. So it's not just like, oh, I feel better. It's like, no, my brain has actually changed. This technique that I'm doing has changed the way that I think, changed it from always going to negative or always getting caught in anxiety. And so if we can be more aware of how we think, then we can take a step back from our automatic thoughts and we can start to question them and start to mold them into something which is more helpful for us. And so for me, that's personally why I think mindfulness and meditation is so powerful, because of course it's been practiced for hundreds, even thousands of years, but now in the last 20 years, even the last 5 years, honestly, they've started to do incredibly good science on it, using MRI machines, studying the brains of Buddhist monks and all that good stuff, which has literally shown measurable changes in the way that we think and behave after really not that long meditating. So yeah, it's like tangible differences.
Sounds great and really tangible for sure, like in terms of that change. I took a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, and meditation was a really key part in that. And it really focused on a daily meditation, anywhere, the first ones we did were like 10 minutes, but then, working up to like an hour. Is there kind of like a very specific guidance that you give to people in terms of how much, how many, or is it really kind of personal driven?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things are true. It's literally whatever you have time for. Most of the clients that I work with are people that have meditated at least a little bit on their own. So most of the meditations that I give my clients are between 15 and 20 minutes long. But I would say if you're just beginning, literally there's no right answer. Meditate for as long as you have. Even 3 good deep breaths where you're paying attention to the inhale and the exhale for 3 full breaths. I mean, that's already amazing for somebody that's never meditated before. Objectively, most of the science that has been done on meditation, so you mentioned the MBSR, that's one of the 8-week courses that is often used as a scientific benchmark for people that have kind of learnt to meditate, in quotes. Most of those courses do recommend at least 20 minutes a day. But for mindfulness meditation, there's not kind of like a specific time that you must do it for. I mean, there are other types of meditation such as TM, transcendental meditation, where they say 20 minutes twice a day, I think, or it might even be longer than that, but that's not my specialty. But what I would say is that mindfulness meditation really is about finding what works for you. And so if 5 minutes seems manageable to you, do 5 minutes. Literally set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes and just focus on your breath as much as you can for 5 minutes, or find a YouTube meditation or one of mine on Insight Timer. No, like shameless plug. But yeah, so I would say do not heap more pressure on yourself to do more than is manageable for you. I am a meditation teacher, and some days I literally do 10 minutes because, life is busy. Like, I have a puppy, I have to give him breakfast, and I have to like go to the supermarket, and I have to like work out and do some work. And, I don't have time to like sit there all day being like, I am a Zen monk, like meditating all day. I'd love to, but I also have a life. So you have to make it fit in with your life in order for it to be sustainable and for you to get consistent long-term results. However, like I say, most scientific studies work on the basis of the fact that you'll get the most results, the best results, if you do at least 20 to 30 minutes a day. But you can work up to that. Like, you don't have to start doing 20 or 30 minutes a day, because that's just too much for a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's where we started with maybe 5 or 10, because it was just starting to train yourself. And do you think that there is a kind of different quality to meditation, like whether you're doing a guided meditation versus, say, doing one where you're just sitting in a chair and closing your eyes and focusing on breath? Like, do you get a different benefit from different types, or which do you recommend?
Well, like I say, I recommend whatever works for you. But I get that that's an annoying answer, because it's like, yeah, great, Hannah, but what does that actually mean for me? But I mean, I would say that the goal is not necessarily to get rid of all guided meditations. I think a lot of people think that guided meditations are kind of for beginners. And then what they eventually want to do is do it without anything and just do it themselves. And that can be helpful. Being able to sit with yourself by yourself with no guidance whatsoever is amazing if you can. But a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people need the guidedness in order to kind of get to that space of focus. I would also say that guided meditations can be very helpful because there's as many different meditations as there are meditation teachers, and one technique that works for one person might not work for you, and vice versa. And also quite often when we're in a space where we could benefit from meditation, you know, if we're feeling really stressed or really caught up in our own thoughts, sometimes having somebody else talk to us, or having outside guidance, or just a fresh voice or like a fresh perspective from a guided meditation on an app or YouTube or whatever, can actually help us to kind of get out of ourselves and interrupt the cycle of anxious thoughts or whatever we're dealing with. So I would say that actually finding an app or a teacher like me, or a YouTube channel that you like can actually be really, really helpful. And it doesn't mean that you're kind of cheating or doing it wrong. To answer the second part of your question, what technique is better? There's a really great, I don't know what I would call it, analogy, I guess, metaphor, analogy, I don't know, from the meditation teacher, I guess you would call him, Dan Harris. So he is the founder of 10% Happier, which is an app and a company in the US teaching accessible meditation. And he says to think of meditation as, so meditation is like the word sports. So you have an umbrella of sports, but within the sports, there's lots of different other sports: swimming, golf, tennis, football. And meditation is kind of the same. Meditation is the umbrella term. And then underneath that, you've got loving kindness meditation. You've got mindfulness. You have contemplation. You have affirmations. There's a whole bunch of different kinds. Body scan, embodiment. So I teach a variety of all of those kinds. And that's kind of what I do. I will speak with a client and they'll tell me what they need or what they're struggling with. And then I will personalize a guided meditation for them based on a particular technique or a variety of techniques. So yeah, I guess it's about finding what works for you, finding a teacher that resonates. Like some people swear by, for example, Andy Puddicombe, who's the voice of the Headspace app. Some people love him. They can't meditate with anyone else. And some people are like, oh, I cannot stand his voice. I cannot meditate with him. And so, you know, it's about finding what works for you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And maybe even a variety can help you stick with it, right? Like kind of like when I think about exercise, I do like I spin and I run and I weightlift and I do all these things so that I'll keep active. And maybe with meditation, if we can, you know, have a variety, some that we're doing on our own, maybe some with guided, it can keep us, you know, intrigued enough to keep going.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I always say that actually. It's funny because there is a phrase that says, you know, you can never step in the same river twice. which is true because it's always flowing and you're always different every time you step into the river, right? But with the same thing, you can't do the same meditation twice. Even if you listen to the same meditation every single day for the rest of your life, you would be different every time. However, you are extremely correct in saying that that might get kind of boring for you. I mean, you'd probably learn a lot and you'd probably see incredible growth from one day to the next. But definitely, there is also a lot of value in doing lots of different kinds of meditation and using a different technique for a different issue. You know, you might use the noting mindfulness technique for one issue if you're feeling this way. And then another day you might think, actually, do you know what? I need more relief of this kind. I'm going to do a body scan today. And it's funny that you said that about working out because I'm the exact same. I literally don't do the same workout 2 days in a row. And today I did a dance workout instead of running because I was so sick of running. So I was like, no, I'm going to do a dance workout because I'm bored. And you know what? I loved it. It was great. So I can go back to running now and I won't be as bored.
Yeah. And like, that's what I find is that then, you know, there are certain ones that I get into and then it's like, oh, I really like this workout for a while and I still do the others. But yeah, I could see that even with meditation. And I like that focus that maybe you have to look inside and figure out like what issue you're trying to tackle and that might mean a different meditation. Like I've had days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just have a big headache and all I want is quiet. And that's when I think like, yeah, you know what? I should just do like a self-led quiet meditation, breathing kind of thing. And then it's helpful. So that makes a lot of sense. Do you love the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast? Well, first of all, thank you so much. Second of all, if you love the podcast and you want more and more to keep coming, I would love your support through Ko-fi.com. Ko-fi.com is a way that you can put a little money towards your favorite podcast. It can be as little as a few dollars, one time, bunch of times, whatever you feel that you can give. And it helps to cover all the costs that go associated with podcasting. So if you would like to support this podcast, please consider donating through Ko-fi.com. You can find the link in my Instagram feed under Linktree. It's at Sarah Lady Gluten, or you can visit Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/learning to slay the beasts. I appreciate your support, whether you can give or not. Thanks so much for listening. Just a little more on the sticking with it part. I guess one of the things I've struggled with personally, and I hear from so many, is this idea of daily, right? Like we all struggle with, you know, doing something every single day. Does it have to be, or is it something that you can still see growth if it's 3 times a week?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. It depends what your aim is. So, I mean, long story short, like the short answer is absolutely, you can do it as many times as you want. Like it's not all lost if you don't meditate every single day. Like that's my short answer. My short answer is listen, if you do it twice a week, that's better than no times a week. If you do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times every single day, like that's amazing. It's not about trying to be the world's best meditator and, oh my gosh, I dropped today, therefore I suck. It's never going to work. I might as well give up. Like that kind of all or nothing thinking is just not helpful for anything. I guess if you're looking for the genuine brain change that I was talking about before, obviously the more you do it, the faster your changes will appear. It's kind of the same, like, you know, thinking about going to the gym. Like there's a lot of similarities in fitness because it's about kind of consistent actions, right? So if you work out 3 times a week, you'll get good results. But if you work out 6 times a week, you know, like maybe you'll get faster results. But again, it's about what works for you. For some people, 6 times a week would be way too much and they would burn out and fall off the wagon and never do it again. So it really is about what works for you. There are some people that will say, oh no, you know, when you're starting a new habit, you have to do it every single day and you can't drop a day. And there are different ways of keeping track. I mean, I like to use like a paper calendar, you know, like I'm really old school. If I'm trying to get back into a habit, or if I'm really trying to, you know, do a particular kind of meditation for a month or something, I literally will print out a calendar and put it on the fridge and use a pen to like tick off every day.
I'm like that too. I like lists. So I like that tangible calendar and the checkbox.
Yeah, exactly. And there are lots of ways that you can keep track. Again, there's a section in my book that talks all about it because everybody's got kind of a different way of doing it. Some people like to have everything on their phone. Some people like us are really old school and we do the whole pen and paper thing, which sounds so like old fashioned these days.
I know.
There are apps that help you keep track as well. The thing is to find a consistent timetable and time that works for you. People often ask me when the best time to meditate is. And I always say, listen, the best time to meditate is when you're going to do it. Like, you know, if you tell yourself you're going to do it every day at 6 a.m., but you know that like you're not a morning person and you're always late, then maybe not 6 a.m. is not going to work for you. You know, do it at lunchtime, do it when your dinner's cooking, you know, like I really just like to say to people, it's okay to make it work for your life. You don't have to be the perfect meditator, you know, getting up at 5 a.m., doing it perfectly. Like, you know, so
that's one that I've struggled with. Is the morning, because I can get up and work out because I don't know, I can seem to make myself know that I'm going to have those awesome endorphins. I don't know what it is, but I find when I get up and then I go sit down somewhere to meditate, it feels like, oh my gosh, this is so much like sleeping. And it just, I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Some people, it doesn't work in the morning because they're like, no, I'm going to go straight back to sleep. So it really is what works for you. I mean, and also I would say that at the moment, because it's been or it feels like it anyway, it's been such a long, cold winter in the UK, I'm really into this idea of kind of seasons at the moment and seasons of ourselves. And that doesn't have to go in the 4 seasons of the natural world. It can, you know, you can have loads of different seasons in 1 month. You know, it kind of depends on what's going on with you. But for example, sometimes I feel like I have a season where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to get up really early. I'm going to sit up as soon as I wake up. I'm going to do a meditation. It's going to be great. I'm going to get coffee. I'm like super motivated. And then other times I'm just like, actually, do you know what? I want my meditation to be my sort of safe space to help me wind down to go to sleep. So sometimes I'll meditate kind of in the evening before I go to bed, and sometimes both. Or sometimes I'll do a meditation designed to help me feel really energetic in the morning, and then a really chilled kind of yoga nidra type meditation in the evening. So again, it really is about finding what feels good to you, finding what works for you.
That makes sense. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about your book? So it's called Breathe Like a Badass as well.
Yep.
I know you mentioned it's got some templates and different things in it, but walk us through what's all in there.
Yeah, sure. So it came out in December, which is really exciting.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's got a bright pink cover, which I'm very excited about. When I told the publisher that I wanted it to be my like signature pink color, I thought they'd be like, no, darling, that won't sell. And they were like, oh, absolutely, let's do it. So, so it's called Breathe Like a Badass. And its subtitle is Beat Anxiety and Self-Doubt, Calm Your Inner Critic, and Build a No-Nonsense Mindfulness and Meditation Toolkit. And really, it is what it sounds. It's kind of got my story and kind of my longer introduction at the beginning, but then each chapter is a way of using mindfulness to help you with each of these issues. So there's a kind of beginner's guide. There's a bunch of kind of frequently asked questions and sort of meditation myths. You know, a lot of the questions that come up, like, what do I need to get started? How do I track my progress? You know, what do I do if I feel like I suck? Like, what happens if I miss a day? Like, what happens if I can't use my breath? You know, some people hyperventilate if they focus on their breath. Why do I keep falling asleep? Like, that's a big question, you know.
I've had that happen.
Exactly. So do I. I mean, let's be real. Like, we don't always get a perfect night's sleep. So sometimes when you sit down and focus on your breath, you go to sleep. Like, it's your body's way of telling you need more sleep. Like, don't feel bad about it. But yeah, so each of the chapters basically focuses on a different kind of issue. So comparison, grief, anxiety, doing your own thing, whether that's quitting your job or deciding to take a less conventional road in life, or doing something that other people don't understand. Productivity, sleep, mindful use of technology, body confidence. That's a big vulnerable chapter because I've struggled with body confidence a lot in my life. Self-care, like how to eat, drink, and kind of move your body a little bit in a way that feels good. Money. There's a section on kind of being mindful with your money, but it's it's not just me telling you to save up and not buying coffee. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And then there's also a bit at the end which I think is quite pertinent these days, which is kind of mindfulness for activism and actual real change, because I think a lot of people think that mindfulness is maybe quite a selfish thing, or it's been whitewashed, or there's kind of lots of backlash against the mindfulness movement. And in sometimes like rightly, the idea, it's the same idea as you get, yoga is just for skinny white women in like expensive yoga pants. And it's like, no, it's not. It's for everyone. So the book is basically, it's like a handbook on all these different things that so many of us struggle with in life, whether it's, like I say, confidence, career, focus, sleep, productivity, body issues, mindful eating and drinking, how to feel like you have a place in the world, all these issues, and how to basically use mindfulness to help navigate those issues without losing your mind, basically. How to be an adult without losing your mind.
I think we could all use that for sure. It sounds great.
Yeah, so that's what it's all about. And actually, I wanted to say that anyone that buys a copy of the book, if they contact me by DM or email, I also have a bundle. I'm calling it the Badass Book Bundle, but it's basically a page on my website, which has got all of the guided meditations in it. So after each chapter, there's a meditation in the book, designed to help specifically with the issue that chapter talks about. And it's written down because it's a book, obviously. But if you DM me or email me, I'll give you a link to the page that has the audio guided versions of all of the meditations and some journal prompts to help you think more deeply about the issues in the book. So yeah, I'd be really happy to send that to anyone that has a copy of the book that wants to kind of dig deeper and learn more.
That sounds great and very useful. I love journaling as well. It can be so helpful. So why don't we dig in a little bit further to the inner critic coaching that you're doing? Tell us just a little bit more about your practice and, kind of the tools that you're offering and how it works, I guess, if you're somebody that knows you have this inner critic.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, well, I always say kind of the biggest thing that I want people to take away from working with me or from anything that I do is that firstly, you can change the negative thoughts that you have in your head. You don't have to listen to your inner critic. And secondly, the biggest one is that you can love yourself. Like you can actually talk to yourself in a kind way, and that's okay. It's not going to make you weak. It's not going to make you lose all of your ambition. So many of us have been taught that the only way that we can get ahead, the only way that we're worth anything is by how many hours a day we work or how much we get done. And don't get me wrong, like achievement is good. Like, I've written a book. I feel pretty good about that. But I'd also be worth feeling good about myself, even if I hadn't written a book, I would be worth living, worth loving, worth taking up space in the world, even if I didn't do anything today except get out of bed and have a cup of coffee, because we are humans, and that's true for everyone. And it's just about basically not seeing your own self-worth as related to how much you've done or how many things you've ticked off your to-do list, or whether you believe that you are worth loving at all. Because really the idea of inner critic coaching is to help you change that voice in your head that tells you that you're not good enough or that you haven't got enough done today, or that, everyone else has got their, like, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this podcast. Everyone else has got their shizzle together except you. Yeah. And yeah, that's basically how I describe it. You are good enough. You are worth loving no matter what. And so inner critic coaching is basically the process of helping people actually believe that. Because it's very easy to be like, yeah, sure, Hannah, like, except not me though, because I haven't done this, or I'm uniquely broken in these ways, or I am secretly the worst in the world at this, or, or you might think like, well, I don't care about anyone else. Like, everyone else can feel good about themselves, but I can't, because I need to do this, or, it's really important for me to get this done. Or this happened to me in my childhood, or I've always struggled with this. So actually, I can't feel good enough about myself because insert a million reasons here. And that really can translate into so many issues. It can cause imposter syndrome, where you think that, you're going to get found out at any moment and that you're not really worthy of your achievements. It can cause chronic anxiety, where you're second guessing yourself and thinking that, someone's going to find you out, or that you're not good enough, or you have to worry about something, because if you don't worry about it, the whole world will come crashing down. It can cause so many kind of stress related physical issues like migraines, depending on how much you believe in that, stress related physical conditions like backache or kind of sleep issues. It can cause just so many long-term chronic problems in how you behave, in how you feel, in how you move through the world. If you're someone that is constantly telling yourself every single day, even subconsciously, if you're telling yourself that you're not good enough and that you suck and that, you're not good enough to do this or whatever, then you won't put yourself forward for opportunities. You won't kind of take up space in the world. You're probably not going to stand up for yourself when people challenge you. You're not going to do things in your life that feel scary. You're not going to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. You're not going to let yourself relax, because you're going to feel like you have to be always doing something or doing more than you are. So having a negative inner critic in your head is just like a recipe for burnout and misery. And I know that's true, because that's what I used to be like. So really my techniques are about helping women who are struggling with an aspect of this or all of this to come to a place where they believe that they are good enough, not only from an intellectual point of view, but also kind of emotionally, like deep in their bones, they believe that they're good enough. And the techniques that I use for that, like I said earlier, are kind of very varied, but it can be anything from a guided visualization, where you kind of imagine that you're in a safe space, or you imagine that you're hiking up a mountain, or you imagine meeting yourself in the future and seeing what you're like. Some people love visualizations. Some people think they're really cheesy. So it depends on the person. For some people, it's simply about feeling at ease in their own body. So for someone that was struggling with that, I might give them a guided body scan. Some people just don't know how to talk to themselves nicely. So I might give them a loving kindness meditation, which is based on a kind of meditation known as metta in the original Theravada Buddhism tradition, where you basically repeat mantras to yourself, saying, I wish, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I feel at ease in my body. And again, for some people that's going to feel really cheesy, but for some people it really resonates. Some people just have this crazy busy monkey mind that they can't shut off. So for some people, I might just give them a mindfulness meditation that is designed to help them focus. And once they're able to focus, they're like, oh gosh, actually, underneath all the noise and distraction, I actually do quite like myself. So all I need to do is find a way to cut through the distraction. But for some people, they don't want to cut through the distraction, because once they get rid of all the noise, they discover that actually deep down, they really don't like themselves, and it's scary and it's hard. And they would prefer to stay busy because they don't know what they'll find if they give themselves space. So it's kind of all of those different issues and juggling it. I guess another way of talking about it as well, just quickly to kind of answer your question fully, is a lot of the people that I work with, so many of my clients are going through a transitional period. They're going. So I have only noticed this after, you know, working with people for a few years, because I didn't really think this when I was initially starting my business, but it just happens that so many of the women I speak to are dealing with the end of a relationship, or wanting to quit their job and start another one, or they have quit their job but they don't know what they're going to do next, or they're moving across the country, or they're really unhappy in their job, or they want to leave their relationship. Or I worked with someone who had just transitioned with gender transition, and they were looking for a way to kind of feel comfortable kind of in their, like, literally in their new skin. And so yeah, it does seem to be a lot of people are searching for that kind of inner groundedness and that kind of inner haven that they need inside of themselves when their life is kind of externally kind of changing. I kind of like to think of it as like you are the eye of the storm. Like everything around you can be completely crazy, and as long as you're kind of centered and still, then you're fine, you're safe. And it's kind of that idea, really. When I talk about being grounded, I talk about like feeling like you can come home to yourself no matter what's going on around you.
Yeah, I really, really like that. And I think it makes a lot of sense, especially I know you were saying initially, like that critic piece. Sometimes we think that that is the root of our motivation. And I've had this, even, you know, in working on some of my anxiety, that I've been concerned, like, well, you know, if I become more at ease, maybe I won't have that motivation. But you're right. Like things feel a lot better when you can have that motivation from a positive place instead of like forcing yourself or, you know, being critical and things like that. So I think this sounds very, very valuable. And I like that there's such a variety of things that you're using there in helping to, kind of address this for everyone. It makes a lot of sense. I guess before we wrap up, are there any other tools or even kind of, last advice that you want to mention to listeners?
I think that in terms of other tools, I would always say, I mean, I've said a load of times that it's about finding what works for you. But I think that, I guess two answers to that question. Firstly, it's not all just about meditating, right? Like I think people think I'm a meditation teacher, so I'm just going to tell them that all they have to do is meditate and their lives will be perfect. And it's like, no, like mindfulness is a tool in the toolkit of being kind to yourself. And it's a way of, yes, rewiring your brain to be kinder to yourself. But part of that work is then actually being kinder to yourself. So self-care, you know, it's a real buzzword right now, and it's been overused and commercialized and blah, 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 blah. But mindfulness is one tool. You know, there are other tools like getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating food that feels good, going outside, going for a walk, doing some exercise that feels good for you. Like doing something creative that, you know, maybe you would normally say like, oh, I don't have time for that. Like give yourself permission to do something creative for no other reason than because you want to do it. And you don't even have to be good at it either. You know, like I think there was something I saw on Instagram a few days ago that said you don't actually have to be good at your hobbies, you know, like
yeah, they can be terrible little art pieces, but it's, you know, if it's doing something and making you feel good. No, yeah, absolutely. I'm a horrible crafter.
You know, like, you know what I learned to crochet over kind of the past pandemic-y times that we are in. And my first crochet projects were like terrible. Like I'm just like, I like look at them now and I'm like, oh no, what happened there? Like I was just, you know, but like, and now I'm better, but it took me like a year. And, you know, I think there is that. I think it's allowing yourself to do something just because you want to. I mean, for example, for ages, I struggled with actually reading fiction books.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just like, okay, firstly, like, when do I have time to just sit down and read a book? Secondly, when I read a book, I'm like thinking about whether on my phone, like, and then I just end up scrolling on my phone with the book like underneath my phone. Be like, no, this is not like, you have to actually read the book to read the book. And then it's like, yeah, but it's a fiction book, maybe I should be reading something about meditation or something about psychology, or, like, let's make the most of this reading time. And it's just like, oh my gosh, no, like, the whole point is that you are allowed to do something just because it's pleasurable and just because you want to, and not everything has to be about self-improvement or, be Instagrammable or like look good to the people. So that would definitely be a top tip that I would have in terms of other techniques. It's not just about meditating. That's just one part of your self-care toolkit. And I think the other short part of the answer is, in terms of actual tools, there are some fantastic meditation apps out there that I would encourage people to start with. 10% Happy is one of my favorite ones. Headspace is a great one to start with if you're a beginner, because it's quite simple. The Calm app, a lot of people use that. Sam Harris, he kind of divides people. His Waking Up app, some people love it, some people really don't like it. Guess that's true of everything, right? Yeah, so I would advise those apps if people want to kind of start to put a meditation habit in place. Oh, I've also started using one called Balance, which is really good. So yeah, there's a bunch.
Those sound great. Yeah, no, I think that all makes a lot of sense. And I struggle as well with that idea of, just doing something to do it and have fun. And it's sort of, I'm very, type A, and it's like, I've got, extra time where I write, or I, do fitness, or and it's always kind of something that has a goal. And so you're right, like just kind of spending time doing something fun, that is a part of self-care. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it is really hard to do when you're not used to doing it, like, we are type A people that are always told that our value is wrapped up in what we do. And so, we have to excel at everything, like we can't paint unless it's going to be really great. And, unless we can set up an Etsy shop, selling
and
our
make
craft
money.
pieces,
Yeah, exactly.
It's not worth it. And it's like, yeah, Etsy shops are great. Like, by all means do that if it makes you happy, but also you don't have to. So that's really important. And again, that's part of rewiring your inner critic, so that instead of her sitting on your shoulder telling you that your craft pieces suck, she can be your best supporter. She can be like, yeah, you did a crochet today. Like, it doesn't matter if it's terrible. Like, yay, go you, So,
yeah. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This is great. I think you've got so many wonderful practical tips. I love that a lot of what you're talking about is, something people can actually do. It doesn't seem like it's at that high level where, then you're like, okay, I get it. This is how I need to change, but I don't really know how. I think, a lot of this work is so practical and implementable, which is great. So I'm sure listeners are going to want to find out more about you. What are the best ways to connect with you?
Yeah, so everything that I do is basically called Breathe Like a Badass. So if you just type Breathe Like a Badass into Google, it'll probably come up. I mean, the book is obviously the most accessible. It's available pretty much all over the world. Although I have heard people in Australia and Switzerland, for some reason, are not able to order it on Amazon, which is really frustrating. But it's available in, the UK and the States, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all good bookshops. So the book is the most accessible way of finding out more. But also, Breathe Like a Badass on Instagram. Hannah@breathelikeabadass.com if you would like to email me. My website, breathelikeabadass.com. My podcast, Breathe Like a Badass podcast. So it's all there.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure people want to check out the podcast as well. Sounds good.
Yeah, I haven't updated it for ages, but there are new episodes coming. So, you can work your way through the existing episodes, and then I will, I'll update some new episodes shortly when I've had a chance to actually edit them.
No, that's perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for joining me today. And I'm sure the listeners, like I said, are going to get a lot from this episode, and I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate yours too. Thank you so much. And thanks for the great questions. And I always love chatting about this stuff, as you can tell. So it's been an honor. Thanks so much.
About a year ago, we got a new puppy named Charlie. Charlie is a lab collie crossed with an Australian cattle dog, a blue heeler. And Charlie is a super chewer. He chews anything he can get his hands on, blankets, he chews any toy that we get and destroys it within a few seconds. So this is why I'm excited to give Charlie the BarkBox Super Chewer. BarkBox Super Chewer comes with 2 tough toys that are always fluff free because Charlie can destroy anything with fluff. He literally can find the weak link in that toy and then he just goes to town. It also comes with 2 full-size bags of treats that are customizable for allergy or diet preferences, and then 2 all-natural meaty chews. So you can also get your dog, especially if he's a super chewer, a BarkBox Super Chewer subscription, and you can use my link, which is www.superchewer.com/reallife. And this link gives you an extra free month of Super Chewer, which is valued at $45 and is valid on the multi-length plan. So you can sign up with 3 months or 6 months or a year and then see what you like in terms of keeping your dog happy and not chewing the things that he shouldn't be chewing, like Charlie did when we first got him, and he chewed the corners of our walls and our trim in our house and our couch and so many things. So get BarkBox Super Chewer. And again, my link is www.superchewer.com/reallife. Thank you so much to Hannah Jane Thompson for talking with me today and digging more into all of my really practical questions around meditation. It's something that I really love, and I'm still, even though I give guided meditations and I talk about its power, I'm still always struggling to find that way to fit it in and keep it in. I loved her idea of doing a 30-day type challenge with ourselves. I think what my best bet would be is to literally print out a calendar of the month and do the check mark thing, because I think for me, those check marks are like a real gold star kind of thing. And I think that would be a great challenge to do. I also loved all of her practical tips and her mantras. I liked the "May I be safe, happy, and at ease in my body" mantra. I thought that was really great. And I loved all of her references to how to overcome the inner critic and also how to stick with this just long term and really start to get ourselves into that place where we are feeling our best. So again, if you want to reach out to Hannah Jane to learn a little bit more, her book is available, Breathe Like a Badass. You can follow her on Instagram. It's at Breathe Like a Badass. Also, she mentioned her email, which is hannah@breathelikeabadass.com. So please reach out to Hannah if you are interested in learning more, and enjoy your week. Thank you for listening to the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. Please keep in mind, this podcast is not intended to be medical or professional advice. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can follow me on social media, Instagram and TikTok at Sarah Lady Gluten, or Facebook, Sarah_gluten-free lady. You can also visit my website, which includes author information, speaking information, and more info on the podcast at www.se-german.com. If you like the podcast, please feel free to review the podcast on your favorite platform and also subscribe, because it means that it will show up for you every week on your favorite podcast platform. Also, we've just started to have the ability to support the podcast. You can find this link in my Instagram bio or visit Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/learning to slay the beasts. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.